I'm going to tell you everything a person would want to know if they were thinking about moving to Mid-Missouri. First, please like and subscribe so you can help me grow my channel. I would like to be able to put some money towards video editing and also be encouraged to continue doing videos. Okay, I have lived in Mid-Missouri my whole life other than a few years. I lived in Nebraska and I went to school in Nebraska. My fiance is also from a small town in Nebraska, and I have experienced some in Nebraska as well. Okay, in Mid-Missouri, I'm going to first real quick give you a list of the things that I'm going to talk about before I elaborate on them. That way, and I'll also include this list in the description below. But that way, like if you're interested in hearing about work is going to be last. So then you'll know you can skip ahead. Okay, let me give you that list, and then I'm going to elaborate on each one. Okay, you won't get as much stuff. It's not as, the cities are not, until you get to Kansas City. Well, Kansas City is not Mid-Missouri. The cities are not as big as bigger cities. And to give you my background, I grew up specifically in Ashland, Missouri, and whenever I would grow up, we would go to Jeff City sometimes, but mostly Columbia is the place you would go to. Now I live in Holt Summit, Missouri, and it's a town just outside of Jeff City, and I have a painting company, and we say we're based in Jeff City, and I've worked in Columbia a bunch. So I consider Columbia to Jeff City, and then some of that surrounding area is Mid-Missouri. Okay. So you're not going to get as much stuff as you would in a big city like I did in Omaha, and I kind of miss that when it comes to stores and stuff. But the towns are not as small as you would expect. The towns, even other than Jefferson City and Columbia, when you get to other parts of Missouri, north or south, the towns can get a lot smaller, and that's what people in Nebraska expected out of all of Missouri, Mid-Missouri as well. Okay, number 3. I'll talk about the different towns. I did a little bit, but I'll describe how Columbia is quite a bit different than a lot of the others. It's not quite as redneck. Number 4 is it's not quite as redneck as you might think, as people kind of expect in Mid-Missouri. You will find it, though, if you look closely, but it's not as prevalent as it is in other areas of Missouri. Weed is legal, if you didn't know. It just got legalized recreationally. You can walk into a store buy weed. Number 6, I'll talk about how the people are in terms of kind of their, not necessarily political, but sort of like basically they're kind of conservative. Number 7, there's personal property tax. That really sucks, and it's not fair. Number 8, there's still a fair amount of space when it comes to land. Number 9, outdoors, caves, hiking, and trails. And number 10, I'll talk about work. Okay, let's get into number 1 a little bit more. I'll try to make these as quick as I can. In Columbia, or when I lived in Omaha, the store selection is better. It's nicer. So, for example, Columbia is quite a bit nicer than Jeff City, but Jefferson City, they don't have a Home Depot. For example, then I needed a 9-inch. So they just don't have all the tools that we need for painting and stuff like that, and they just don't have everything that you would be able to find in a bigger city. They don't have all the stores. I mean, it's quite surprising they don't have a Home Depot. They'll probably get one soon. If somebody would open one, they would probably make a lot of money. But yeah, it's just I miss that and that shopping. I don't know. Oh, restaurants, food. Your options are just really a little bit more limited than you would get in a bigger city. Also, let me tell you first, this wasn't one of the items, but overall, I do think Mid-Missouri is a good place to live. It's a good place to raise a family, and it's enjoyable. I don't think it's the best place to live. We do kind of want to move to Austin, maybe Texas or maybe in North Carolina. We want to move to a bigger city, basically, and we could find better weather. But I do think Mid-Missouri overall is a good place to live, but I just don't think it's the best place to live unless you have another reason to want to live here. Okay. Number 2, the towns are not quite as small as people would expect. When you get into other parts of Missouri, a lot of the towns are really small. In Mid-Missouri, so you got Jefferson City and Columbia, but in between you have Ashland, which that's where I grew up. And Ashland's a growing town, but you also have all around here, you have all these towns that are not that small. When I say they're not that small, let's say they probably have about 5,000 people in the town or so. In 2010, Ashland population came in at 3,700. All right, so here you got Missouri pretty much in the middle of the nation, and then mid-Missouri right in the middle of the state. Okay, Columbia, that's kind of where you would basically consider the foundation of mid-Missouri, or really in between Columbia and Jefferson City. But you see Columbia is on I-70, and you have about a 2 hour or less, actually, maybe an hour and a half-ish drive to Kansas City or St. Louis when you're in Columbia. So that's one fair thing about it. Okay, the rest of the area that I would consider mid-Missouri, Jefferson City here is mid-Missouri, California, Fulton, King City, Ashland. So Ashland's where I grew up. So all these towns are not that small. Ashland in 2010 had a population of 3,700. Fulton's a little bit bigger than that. New Bloomfield smaller than Ashland. Holt Summit smaller than Ashland. California smaller than Ashland. Jeff City is the capital, and it's a bit smaller than Columbia. So this is kind of your area, but yeah, these towns are not too bad. One more thing on the towns, and this is going to be really nice inside information that you won't be able to find on the internet, is I'm going to tell you about the different towns and give you a better idea of where you might want to live. Because, I mean, I live in Holt Summit, but I still can work in Columbia. So Holt Summit is the town that is going to be the next come up. People are going to talk about Holt Summit in 15 years, in 10 years. It's going to be the Ashland. So I grew up in Ashland. All the while I was growing up, everybody always talked, Ashland's growing, Ashland's growing, Ashland's growing. And Ashland was exploding, and it's still exploding. They've done so much. Now, a lot of the towns in mid-Missouri have been exploding, but Ashland has been a standout from the rest. The school district is excellent. Everything was excellent. Now, I haven't lived, well, I did live in Ashland a few years ago, but, you know, I'm a little bit more outside the scene once I wasn't in school. But from what it sounds like is Ashland, as it's getting bigger, they're getting more problems. They're getting a little bit more crime and that kind of thing. The other thing about Ashland is has failed a little bit on how they can execute as a little bit bigger town. They are just finally catching up with like commercial fast food places and stuff. So Holt Summit, well, they don't even have a high school in Holt Summit, which is very strange. They're going to get one soon, I would imagine. Not too soon, but maybe 5-10 years. The Holt Summit had way more, still has way more fast food places, drive-through places, I should say, not fast food. And while Ashland, they only had, so Ashland, up until just recently, up until just a few months ago, they only had McDonald's for a drive-through. And then they had Subway, but Subway wasn't a drive-through. So the only drive-through was McDonald's. That's not a great setup. And then their road setup needs to get a little bit better to get traffic through. But they did include some roundabouts, and that's helping with traffic. But I was saying that in Ashland, they got to get a Scooters, and they got to get a Taco Bell. And guess what? They got it. And so Ashland's got a lot more room for businesses to get in there, but or for restaurants, but they might not have much space left anymore until they improvise. There is one really good spot off the highway they should really do, but yeah, Ashland was exploding, but didn't execute that well, I don't think. Holt Summit, I think, has the ability to execute much better. They already have way more fast food places and drive-through places and just businesses like that. They have a better setup. It seems they have a little bit more space, openness. They don't have a high school yet. Their kids go to school in Jeff City, which is very strange. A small town like Holt Summit, I wouldn't think they would want their kids to go to a rough school like Jeff City. Okay, let's talk too about... okay, so Fulton. Fulton's not a bad place to live. It's okay, but it's bigger. It's a little bit bigger, but they have a prison there, or a jail, and it's just a little bit rougher, or at least I don't know exactly, but like when I was in school, it was definitely a little bit rougher. Okay, Jeff City, definitely rougher, definitely more low income. Is full super big hills. It's the capital. There's some okay things about Jeff City, but for the most part, Jeff City kind of sucks. Columbia is good in most ways. So Columbia has all the stores basically. They've got their road setup actually I think is really well. I-70 goes right through it. Highway 63 is the highway you take to get up to I-70 or to get up to Columbia. Their road setup is really nice with just just your typical north, south, east, and west road system. It flows traffic really well. Similar to how Omaha really flowed traffic very well. They got basically any exit off the highway is going to be a main road for you to be able to take. They've got all the stores. They got Home Depot. They got several restaurants. They got it all. They could have a little bit more though. I think they only have one Chinese buffet, and it kind of sucks. But and then they have like 3 Walmarts in Columbia, and in Jeff City they have 2 Walmarts, I think. Okay, at Columbia though is the college, and it's a lot more left-leaning than anywhere else in mid-Missouri. Most of Missouri is a bit conservative, but Columbia is definitely left-leaning. It's got Mizzou, and so like especially if you want that kind of life where there's a lot of socializing, a lot of socialism, and all that stuff, then you might enjoy Columbia. But even if you don't want that stuff, there's still just like, even if you don't like that kind of stuff, even if you're like conservative, Republican, whatever, and you just ignore that, and they're not going to affect your life though. They're not going to affect your livelihood, I don't think, really. They might be passing out a Black Lives Matter sign on the sidewalk, but they're not going to do, and they probably won't do that anymore. I saw that when I was working in Columbia, but and in downtown Columbia can get a little bit different, but okay. Let's move on to I say it's not as redneck as you might think, but if you look closely, you will find it. When you stick to these towns that I talked about, when you're in these towns, you don't really recognize like people seem normal. They seem very, very normal. If you go to smaller towns around, or if you get outside of town a bit, if you will find your examples there. It was kind of easy for me to think, like, especially when I went to Nebraska and they were like, oh, acting like we're real redneck or cousin fuckers and stuff. And I was like, we always said that about Arizona or Arkansas. I didn't think, but other areas of Missouri for sure, like especially further south. If you get further south than like the Ozarks, it gets very redneck. But mid-Missouri is not too redneck unless you get in those areas I talked about where it's not that prevalent, but you find your pretty strong examples. You find like pretty strong examples of things that people are doing. Like actually when I was from like 5 to 8, I lived in Tipton, Missouri, which is not quite it's not mid-Missouri, I wouldn't say. It's a little bit more south and west. And Tipton's a smaller town. And they got what they call Kettners and Kettners 2. And they're like, oh, we're not the same Kettners. But they've been there forever. They were like, oh, they both got dropped off on the train and they were different Kettners. And maybe they were, but you can find, but it gets a little country in mid-Missouri, but the redneckness, it's not that bad. And if you're not a redneck and you don't want to be, well, I mean, there is a lot of like, they fish in the river though. Like there's people that fish in the river, there's hunters, there's all that stuff. But when you stick to your towns, it's not going to affect your life. If you don't want, to be a redneck and that's not your style, you might see a muddy truck go by and stuff like that, but it's nothing going to be like too overwhelming or crazy. If you don't pay that much attention to it, you're probably not going to notice it unless it's like really stands out to you because you've just never seen shit like that. Maybe if you lived in New York City, you might notice it. Okay. Number 5, weed is legal if you didn't know. So, recreational weed, this just happened recently. I think, well, it just happened at the last election. They voted it in. So a conservative state like Missouri voted in recreational weed. You walk right into a dispensary like other states, and you gotta present your ID or whatever, and then you can just buy weed, walk right back out, have it in the bag in the parking lot, which I don't know how many states, but I mean, I've done that in Colorado before, and like a long time ago. So of course it's been around, but it's just a little bit of a weird feeling for Missouri. I didn't quite expect this to happen so quickly in Missouri, and so when you're walking in Jeff City through a parking lot with a bag of weed after you just walked out of a store, it just has a weird feeling to it, a little bit uplifting. I do have a lot of opinions on the legalization of weed, but that's really not what you're interested for, and But overall, I do think it should be legal, just because we should have freedoms that, as long as they don't affect others. I mean, we're allowed to drink alcohol. We're allowed to do a lot of things that it's not all about, we're not communist or whatever, where it's only about what's best for the nation. And I don't think it is best for the nation. And I think the whole tax, it's good for the economy because it brings in tax revenue, is such a flawed way of thinking. It's it's simplistic. It hurts production. It does, just because it brings in tax money. It's not the kind of tax money you want. It's not actually producing anything. You really want to grow your GDP and get tax money from that. But it's not all about what's best for the economy. People should have freedoms. If people want to smoke weed, they should be able to smoke weed. If anything should be illegal, it probably should be alcohol. I've kind of already touched on, but it says people are conservative for the most part. It's not crazy. But yeah, people are overall, it's a little conservative, except in Columbia. Okay, number 7. This really sucks about Missouri. They have personal property tax. There are some other states that have this, but in Nebraska they don't. Now, in Nebraska, though, I think they get their tax from other ways, from the sales tax. But personal property tax can really suck for certain people, especially if you want to do kind of things like I want to do. And I never really wanted to start business in Missouri. It's just kind of what I had to do. My fiance was, she had a job here. So, but my brother does want to stay in Missouri, and so he's a co-owner with me, and so I don't know. Anyways, yeah, personal property tax is kind of crap. So yeah, like you own something, and then you have to pay taxes on it every year you own it. So if you want to own a lot of houses or a lot of land, and you're not going to get a lot of use out of them every year, but it's an asset. You can own an asset. Nothing bad about that. Then you got to pay tax on it. Thousands every year. I mean, fucking kills you. Number 8, there's still a lot of space, especially when you get south of Ashland. There's still a lot of space to grow into. One problem, though, when you get to Jeff City and south, it's very hilly. It gets kind of Ozarky, or I'm not sure if Ozarky is the right word, but kind of mountainy or rocky, hilly. So, so where we live is not, but if you get further south from Jeff City, really is when it starts to get, like almost mountainy. But when you say further north from Jeff City is not too much hills, and so there is a lot of land still to grow into, and they've been doing a fucking shit ton of building for a long time. But it's gonna continue probably. Okay, number 9, the outdoors. All right, there's caves, hiking, and trails, and a lot of fishing. Okay, there's a lot of pretty nice caves you can look at, so that's pretty cool. There's Devil's Icebox in Columbia. You can just go there, walk in, it's like this really huge thing. But there's also like other caves. There's like caves that you probably won't be able to find on Google. And these ones though, you have to, kind of climb a hill to get into and stuff. And I don't think adults probably go in there much. We actually saw one of our teachers that went to high school there as well. Her name was written in the thing, and scribbled in and stuff. And so, I guess it had been a tradition for a long time. But they've got caves like that, like and little the scenery like that. When you can go down to the Missouri River. This is off the river roads in Hartsburg. You go down to Hartsburg, go off river roads, and you get shit like that. So it's interesting. You get to look at the Missouri River, and then hills and trees and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of hiking. There's trails. There's the Katy Trail. That's a very common trail for people to go on. The Missouri River is like a very common thing for people to want to catch big catfish too. And then the Katy Trail is along the Missouri River. I'm not sure if it goes. I don't think it just follows it for the whole. The Katy Trail is really long. In Hartsburg, it's like right next to the Missouri River. I'm not sure that it stays next to it all the way, but there's other trails and stuff. So there's other caves. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. And then fishing, there's not like a lot of big lakes. There's a lot of small lakes, or what people would probably just call ponds. But there is the Lake of the Ozarks. That's a pretty big lake. I actually lived there on the Strip when I was really young, from like 2 and 3 and maybe 4. Well, four for sure, because I actually do have like several memories of. Those are my first memories. So, Lake of the Ozarks. My parents owned a motel on the Strip. They ended up selling it, but yeah, the lake is a very, very popular thing. I don't even think it's just popular for Missouri. I think people come, I think, from all over. You have a lake house down on the Lake of the Ozarks. It's really nice, and I don't know, it's popular. People go down there. You can catch huge catfish. So when we went down there a few years ago and we were living in this condo and we were staying up on the second floor and you look into the water so you have a better view basically to see into the water because when you're too close to the water and you just see really close to shore, really big catfish and then we caught them. So, I mean, I'm not, but it's easy to catch like 50 pounders out of there and stuff if you are gonna do what you've got to do it. But even just fishing like hooligans like we were, you can catch 10 to 20 pounder catfish like easy out of the Lake of the Ozarks. But then there's also people who ride boats and jet skis and whatever on the water. Okay, last and least is the work situation. So the work situation has really picked up over the last few years, like it has all over the place. But at the beginning of 2018, when I first moved here, the pay was horrible compared to like in Omaha. Entry-level positions were like 11 to 13. But now entry-level positions, like in Jeff City, you can start on in a factory at 19. And in Columbia, you can start on in a factory at 21. If you do other jobs that aren't a factory in those areas, it's a couple dollars probably less for entry-level. So it has really picked up a lot. It might be a little bit more than a couple dollars less. Depends what you do. I mean, if you were going to go work for, as no experience and work for, like, somebody to do, like, home construction trade or some kind of labor job, you're going to get at least, I think the bare minimum now is 15. But, if you're any useful, you're going to weasel your way into 16 or 17 pretty much to start off. Or if you're working for, like, a big company, they're probably going to start you off at least 15 in most cases. It seems like there's a glare. Oh, there we go. That's better. Okay, also I started a painting company. It's been running for 2 years and a little over 2 years now. Been slammed the entire time. My brother is a co-owner. Me and him, we're always, we're pretty busy. And with little advertising, we have not done any advertising for a while. Also with like very limited resources to start this. So, anyway, there has been a lot of demand. I do expect demand from the consumer to start to slow down in the painting. I haven't quite seen it slow down yet. And then I also expect demand from employers to slow down, but I have not quite seen that slow down yet. I just got a job in Columbia at Schneider Electric for $21 an hour at a factory. Super easy work. They treat you really well. It's got benefits. So the work situation, now, okay, so if you don't want to be like an entry level, then you probably are going to know what you're looking for. You'll probably look for it, but overall, I'd say economy pretty strong. Even though I would expect a downturn, but it does seem like way stronger than it's usually way stronger than a lot of the other areas in the nation. So I'd say the work area is pretty good. All right, I think that's it for this video. Like I said, please like and subscribe so you can help me grow my channel, and hopefully I can start to monetize this or at least get close so I can purchase some editing tools, maybe camera, maybe be able to shoot some better videos. I would like to grow this channel and provide some value to the YouTube world. And then, on top of that, I'd just say in summary about Missouri is overall, it's a decent place to live. Depends what's drawing you to here. But if you're just overly interested in some of the positive things like the outdoor things or the fishing, the river, but if you have a work situation that's drawing you here, that's probably what most of you are, then I would just tell you that if you think it's worth living here because of your work situation, if it's remotely close to a decent place to live, then I would say it is. The main thing that you're going to miss out on is if you're coming from a bigger city, you're not going to have quite as many options, and it's just not as many people. Not as much competition, not as much stuff going on in schools, but it's still pretty decent. There's still quite a bit of stuff. So, yeah, I think that's it. All right. Bye.